so sweet with her. You ready to go, Harry? What's on? Hello and welcome to WNHH Radio's Dateline New Haven. I'm your host, Paul Bass, inviting you to look behind the headlines and the stories that make our city tick. Mayor Toni Hart makes our city tick morning and night and through very busy weekends. She's here in the WNHH studio for her weekly Mayor Monday checkup on what she and we are up to in the Elm City. Welcome, Mayor Hart.
Thank you very much.
So nice to see you this morning.
Good seeing you.
If you have a question for the mayor, feel free to pop it to us via Facebook Live. Go to the New Haven Independent Facebook page. You'll see the video right there with the comments there. Or if you're Bob, you can call. And thanks to Gateway Community College and Birch and Moses PC for providing financial support for today's program. So among your busy activities this weekend, Mayor Hart, you were at a World War I memorial. And I guess it's a few weeks before the 100th anniversary of the end of World War I, correct? The armistice.
Yes, and it was a beautiful, beautiful commemoration of World War I, the end of World War I, and Bill McMullen did a phenomenal job.
He works for the city architect in the engineering department.
Yes,
and I guess he had a connection to it. He had relatives in that war.
Right.
He has one of the helmets.
Yeah, he has the whole uniform.
It was the war to end all wars.
It was aspirational.
Yeah. And we have continual war now.
Yeah.
So it's the only monument on the green. Right?
Yes.
And so you read all the names yesterday.
We did. Yes.
I wasn't there, but I had a spy, so I know all this.
Okay.
So what did you notice about the event?
I thought it was moving. It was moving to remember how many millions of people died during World War I. I was really, I don't think I really knew that, and so. Just to know that, I think they said something like 23 million people. It was extraordinary. That's larger than some of our small countries. And that the other history that I learned, that resonated with me, that people of all ethnic groups from all who lived in the United States at the time, but especially for me, as an African American, the African American men who fought, they were called the Harlem Hellraisers or something.
Never heard of that.
And I know. Well, I hadn't heard of it either. And the
Harlem Hellraisers.
And they were a very effective fighting group. Many of them came from Connecticut and New York, and they've been lost to history, unfortunately. So it was really important for me to be able to hear their impact. I don't believe they lost a person.
Oh.
So it was, according to what I recall them, the history yesterday. So it was really very interesting and very moving.
And so we read hundreds of names out loud.
Yes, I was a reader, as was Chief Alston and Assistant Chief Kane. And as well, Lawrence Grothier was a reader, and there were other readers. It was, and they had music. They had the Yale concert band play, and the music was just beautiful. And it was a wonderful, wonderful afternoon. For those people that missed it, you really missed a treat.
So now I think it's 17 years or so we've had continual war in the Middle East. It doesn't feel the same. Doesn't feel like the whole country is wrapped up in a war frenzy. It's not as many casualties, but there are casualties, and we are killing people and kind of getting nowhere with those disputes. And it's interesting. We've kind of accepted this forever war, as they used to call it in science fiction when we were younger.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because I think people do forget that we are at war and that we are losing people.
Volunteer army.
With a volunteer army.
In quotes.
And that it doesn't feel, and I don't know that much about it, and I think it doesn't get into the press that much, but I think you're right. It feels like we're not gaining any ground there and not making things better for people. Maybe we are, and we just haven't heard about it. But it just seems like it's a war that just goes on and on and on.
Well, what they predicted in George Orwell and then later science fiction writers like Haldeman was that one way governments keep control is to keep their countries at war and hating some enemy. Although we don't really get whipped up against the Taliban anymore. So
No, I haven't heard a lot of concern about that, and a lot of fear mongering about that. But it kind of now is just folded into every immigrant that comes to this country, not just the Taliban. It's every immigrant, and so that sort of transference of fear onto everyone who's a little different.
Mayor Harp, you were also at the unveiling of a women's empowerment mural on the Farmington Canal Trail.
Yes.
Kwadwo Ade, I don't know if I say his last name right, painted that mural. Are you in the mural?
I'm not.
Diane Brown is in the mural.
Diane is in the mural, and a number of other people, some of whom names escape me, but they are people that work really hard in our community, and they are also symbolic of the different women across our country who have been fighting for freedom since our country began. So it was.
What was the event like?
It was a really nice event. It was the thing that people remarked about is that it was it was a crowd that showed the diversity of New Haven, and the way in which we all get along and that we all sort of support one another. I think there were even little kids there from a daycare center. And,
I'll bet I know a daycare center. Yeah. Now, was it on which side of the border?
It was
Haven side?
It was on the Hampden side.
On the Hampden side.
Yes, but I was there.
You were there. So a lot of other people, and so was Tom Breen. He wrote an article about it.
And showing the collaboration that we have with people across the border.
I feel like Hampden and New Haven are becoming one community in some part, the southern part of Hampden.
Absolutely. I think that you're right about that.
So I hope there's potential for more government regionalism, maybe on that in the Harry. I don't know if you're hearing the phone.
Yeah, I think that we work very much with Hampden and West Haven. I think that there's some real potential in both of those places.
Harry, the phone's ringing. In our high-tech thing here, the phone's ringing. I don't know why we're hearing it. Yeah, who is it for? Is it for you? Remember the old days you had phones that people shared and they rang and you kind of like wondered who was going to get it? Yeah. And then another event you were at this last week, we talked about this last time you were on, that Hank Parker died. He was the former state treasurer, highest elected black official in Connecticut for years. He was a New Haven community leader in the turbulent 60s, early 70s. He ran for mayor. You spoke at his funeral.
I did.
Where was it and what did you say?
Well, it was at Dixville United Church of Christ. And then I talked about how important his contribution was to our community, to our state, and how his contribution continues to give to people who are in the work of managing resources for people across this country. And I know I'm going to be receiving an award on November 9th. One of the organizations that he started, a national organization of African Americans and people of color who manage pension funds and other types of funds for.
So you're getting an award from this group?
Yes, because of some of the work that we've done with our pension funds.
And then we talked about this last time. You actually talked about this when we talked about Hank Parker in the last episode about you can make as much money or more with your pensions and make sure that some of the work goes to black-led firms.
Well, and women. And one of the so at any rate, the work that he's done is recognized across the country, as he was the leader that when he started these organizations, he helped them get business across other states in the country, and it really developed a profession among particularly African Americans, but as well women, and gave them an opportunity to participate in a field that they were restricted from participating in prior to his involvement, because oftentimes the way that you look at money, it's who's been there for generations managing money, and it's really very difficult if you don't have a track record
Yeah.
to get to do that. But what we've discovered and what he showed America was that oftentimes these folks that haven't had the opportunity do as good a job, if not better, job, and so that you really have got to look at the jobs that people do in terms of managing the money and earning money for our various constituents.
And we're doing the job of telling you that you're listening to Mayor Monday at WNHH, your home for community radio, 103.5 FM, live streams at newhavenindependent.org. It's Mayor Monday. Mayor Tony Harp is in the house. Speaking of doing a good job, Patty Lawler has been working in City Hall, in city government, if you count 200 Orange Street as part of City Hall, since 1959, since Dwight Eisenhower was president, a year before I was born. Were you still in Utah then?
I was still in Utah.
All right. And she worked in emergency communications, dispatching police and fire down when it was at 200 Orange Street. She had to put the plugs into the holes in the switchboard when things were happening and send firefighters out to places. Started working in redevelopment after that in the 60s when tearing down all the buildings, including on the street where she grew up on Legion Avenue. Look, got good at contracts, but they kept bringing her in to work when the mayor's office, like when other people weren't there. And she got to know the place, and since 1980 has been working there full time, just in the mayor's office. So she's retiring. She's not in good health. And what's this going to mean for you? Is City Hall going to shut down? There going to be lights on, and people can get their newspapers and coffee. What's your?
Well, we're really worried about it. We tell her all the time that we don't know how we're going to function without her. The things that she just knows subconsciously that she does, that she probably won't know to tell us, and we won't figure out until after we haven't done it. But she does say that she'll be available by telephone, and that after she sort of feels better, because she does have some difficult health issues, that she might be willing to come in and work with us for a couple of days. So we're holding her to that.
It's this thing about someone being so dedicated to public service. Never in the spotlight. She hated it. When they gave her award to the Black Hispanic Caucus, they had to ask her 3 times. And that was Jeanette Morrison, who's a person, I don't think most people have to be asked more than once, but to do something. Yeah. And she had to be asked 3 times. And she's got a great person. Patty is just very competent, works very hard. She gets there before everybody goes to the end of the day. She has that gruff sounding voice, so you think she's kind of mad at you, and then she starts laughing, and as soon as she's very warm. And when I noticed up in her office on the 2nd floor, so many people pass through there in the course of a day trying to find out information from the public, other people in government. And I was writing a story about her leaving. Everyone said, "Thank you for writing about Patty." Usually people say, "Why'd you have to call me?" But Friday, the Thursday, they were saying, "Thank you for calling me and asking me about Patty," because she gave them a lot of advice. So to people from all different walks of life about how to hang in there, find their way through government, get the help they need, or just do their job right. So hats off to her.
No, she's done a phenomenal job. And, it's that soft touch, those subtle kinds of help that she's given people that I think we'll miss the most. Aside from the real work, there are just tons of things she does every single day in terms of running both buildings, the building we're in, 200 Orange Street, all of the proclamations that she writes, all of the contracts, and she's never lost a contract.
Yeah, she's proud of that.
These years.
Yeah. It's a good thing.
It is a good thing.
She's a notary, right? So she signs them.
She signs them all, and she makes sure that we document that we've signed them all, and she just does a phenomenal job.
Does the work. Let me switch topic to Cedar Hill. That's such an interesting neighborhood, Cedar Hill. It's at the north part of East Rock as you're going to the Hampden border off State Street. It's like 8 streets, I think, in a little grid. And you have that East Rock naturally cuts it off from the rest of the city in one direction. And then a highway, I-91, cuts it off in the other. And they're always struggling for attention because they're so small. They can't have their own cop all the time. But then when things get bad there, they get them. They have last week they sent a mixed message that made me wonder about a question that you face every day and that I face every day as a reporter. We try to figure out what a neighborhood thinks, as though a neighborhood were a being with 2 legs and 1 brain and 2 arms and 1 heart, right? So last week we saw Cedar Hill, that an example of how it's tough to know what the neighborhood thinks. So there was a zoning hearing, and neighbors who have lived there a long time, who own houses there, showed up and said, that big gas station that sort of gets you to the beginning of Cedar Hill, that 24-hour one at State and Ferry, they want to expand. They want to make it a convenience store. To do that, they're 24 hours now, but to continue to be 24 hours in that new setup, they need the okay of the zoning board. So several neighbors showed up, and there aren't that many people who live there. So if you get 3 people there, you got like a percentage of the neighborhood. And they said, heck no. That's when all the crime happens. We live here. We don't want, and they said, well, we sell Pedialyte. And they said, that's for crack. moms. You know, it's like it got pretty intense.
Mm.
And so the zoners said, we're going to say yes to the other stuff, but we're not going to give you the 24 hours. And the people who bought the property said, well, then we're not building it. So the next day, unrelated to this, already planned, many of your officials in economic development and line services like LCI and, you know, people who deal with neighborhood blight, they show up at a meeting with merchants, different group of people in Cedar Hill, also the neighborhood. There are a bunch of stores there. And they were livid. Well, they were asking for a lot of help with problems there. And they had some pretty good ideas that came out of that meeting with Matthew Nemerson and others about what to do with a paid parking lot and enforcement with a unbuilt parking lot, laundromat and DOT, State Torrance Tourism, dealing with weeds. But they got on this gas station. And they said, we really want them to invest in that gas station. That's going to make things so much better in the neighborhood. And that, is there any way you can undo this? And Matthew Nemerson said, well, gee, we didn't even know there was going to be this discussion that night where neighbors were coming up. We would have come and said we're for it. But the alder, Anna Festus, said, well, now I'm hearing both sides, so I don't know what to do because you're in the neighborhood and they're the neighborhood. And they're saying it doesn't make things worse. So I went back and asked one of the neighbors who spoke up, who works at City Hall, and she said, they don't live here. So at night, we have to deal with that. And the other people say it's actually safety with cameras and lights. How do you figure out what the neighborhood is in a situation like that? And how do you weigh in on that?
Well, I think it's important to ask the neighborhood and to, you know, while there are more than 3 people, and as you say, maybe not more, but there may be many other ideas. And so I think now we're going to have to really canvass that neighborhood and figure out what they really want.
I'm guessing.
What's that?
That the people who live there don't want it,
mm-hmm.
and the people at stores there do want it.
Well, you know, I think that we've got to do what the people who live there want.
That's interesting. All right. There you go.
Yeah.
That's how you figure it out.
Yep.
And now you're seeing how the sausage is made in government and how we deal with those kind of interesting philosophical, political issues. Who's the neighborhood? And we're dealing with that in Mayor Monday. We got Bob. Bob, we didn't hear you ring, but you're there. Welcome to Mayor Monday.
Yes. Hello, Mayor. Hello, Paul.
Hey, Bob.
How are you?
Good. How about you?
All right. Pretty exciting week last week in the city, Mayor. I'll have to say, watching news reports of a supposed FBI investigation. Can you tell us more about it? And
well, you know, I'll be honest with you.
Are you under investigation?
Well, I know that was one of the things that Mario Boone asked me, and
he's a reporter with Channel 8 WTNH.
Yeah, and I think it was one of those manufactured stories that he's pretty famous for. I believe that I asked the chief to look into it to see, and our corp counsel to determine whether or not we are under investigation for corruption. It's absolutely not true. Whenever a person who works for a government is dismissed because of some wrongdoing having to do with money, the FBI looks into it, but it doesn't then translate into this big corruption scandal at the city of New Haven. So no, it has nothing to do with me. And in fact, I was told by the chief that when he discussed it with the head of the FBI here, the protocol that the persons who were investigating used was inappropriate. So it turned out that they went to where the former employee used to live, and that's where Mario Boone lived.
Well, just say who the employee was. There was someone who worked for your administration, isolated case. She stole a credit card out of Petty Lawler's desk.
Right.
And woman, obviously, wonderful woman, obviously going through some trouble in her life, stole $11,000 worth of services, got caught, got arrested.
Right, and it was on a state charge, but because they do this investigation afterwards, they went to where she formerly lived. Part of the reason that I believe that the credit card was taken in the first place was because she was homeless. But let's put all of that aside. They went to where she lived, and Mario Boone lived there too. He was the person, although he didn't identify himself in his blog, who spoke to the FBI agent, and who knows what that interchange was and how it was embellished. I absolutely don't think he has much credibility as a journalist.
Bob, thank you for your question, buddy.
No, hold on one sec, Paul. Do you think any of your departments need to be investigated further?
No, I don't believe so. I believe that when there's a problem, people let the FBI know and they do their investigation. They normally, as a courtesy, let our police department know and our corporation counsel know. And so I don't know of any wrongdoing that any of our departments are currently engaged in or previously, at least certainly during my term. So I can't imagine why people would want to come in. But, certainly they can. They normally let us know if they think that there may be problems, and they make a determination around whether there is or there isn't.
Bob, thank you so much, buddy. Have a great day.
Thank you, Paul.
I was thinking a lot about that episode last week, Mayor Harp, and sort of in a broader context. Two things came to mind. One is that you can't prove a negative. So we didn't report that there was a FBI corruption investigation because there's no evidence that there was a corruption investigation.
Right.
According to the dialogue that was published on TNH article, an FBI agent was on the door saying we'd like to talk to her, did not use the word corruption, did not say there was a specific allegation otherwise. So that's why we went and wrote a story on it, because sometimes you do get a subpoena. That means there's an investigation. And I covered an FBI investigation in 1998 in City Hall, where they actually came and took all the computers out of City Hall.
Mm-hmm.
We felt that was worth reporting. But you can't prove a negative.
No, and I think the one thing...
For instance, you might know, if they go, like I'm a reporter, there are cops look into things, you poke around all the time without any investigation, without an allegation, and you could find stuff anywhere. The FBI, if they wanted to find anything about me, about you, they could probably find something, no matter how honest we are, no matter how much we spend every waking minute trying to follow the law. They can find something if they want. So if you say there's no investigation, at some point a year later, they could say, see, I mean, they might come up with something. Yeah, I mean, if they're looking, they have a public corruption unit. They're supposed to fish.
No, they are. And and I should have said, to my knowledge, in all honesty, if there is something going on in the city, we want to know about it so we can fix it.
But I mean, we don't know. I mean, to hear it sounds like the fishing part, which I think they're supposed to do. I'm supposed to do that. They're supposed to do that. But, it's dangerous about how you can't prove a negative. I was thinking about the Black Panther murder in New Haven. So the FBI at that time was manufacturing allegations about what Black Panthers are doing to each other. They fake letters and stuff to try to get them to kill each other. Because you can't prove, and there were so many spies in the ranks that if anyone's accused of a spy, you can't prove a negative.
You can't prove you're not.
And the Black Panthers themselves murdered a guy named Alex Rackley, who was not a spy, it appears, because of that allegation. It turns out he was just about the only one who wasn't in the New Haven chapter, but, he got it. And there's a guy named George Edwards, you and I know very well, who was also to be taken out on that same ride under the same allegation, which clearly was not true. And he would have been killed too. So there's a lot at stake. But also it's hard for me, like I do not criticize Mario Boone because I've made that same mistake. It's hard when you're a reporter and an FBI person shows up, go, wow, they're asking around, like, what do I do with this? I'm not saying we made a different decision because there's no evidence that there's a corruption investigation. But I remember I did something terrible. I was thinking a lot about this more than 20 years ago. The head of the FBI told me he was investigating somebody as part of a drug case. And in this case, there really was an investigation. And local police people confirmed to me this person was. And it was a respected person in the community. I went and interviewed this person. And we did a whole big story in The Advocate. And they never had evidence in the end that she was involved. And that was different than this case because there was an investigation into two people. But I felt I was used by law enforcement because the zeal to get a story. And it was so horrible what I did to that woman. I've never really made amends for it, and I could just see how one could fall into that. I was excited at the time. There's the head of the FBI. He's dead now. That's why I feel comfortable saying it. Yeah. And, they didn't have the goods on this woman. It was fine for them to look into it. It was totally, totally wrong for me to run a story, let alone interview her, put her picture in and everything.
Well, I think that the really good thing about you, Paul, is that you do have a sense of remorse, that you can look back on it and now use that as a way to make decisions about how you go forward. And I think that's what is great about really good people who communicate with us, to the public. We absolutely need you, and we count upon you having the kind of thermometer that you have.
But we still make the mistakes, and they hurt.
I know, but you're someone who's learned from those mistakes.
And maybe others will
everyone. Would everyone do that?
Well, I believe in people, and I believe other people can learn from mistakes too.
Well, I am certainly hopeful.
Okay. Well, they're learning in Westville that when storefronts go empty, sometimes they fill up again. A whole bunch. You know how this retail is cyclical, especially in an age of box stores and online retail. Westville Village, I believe, has had this incredible renaissance over the years. But from time to time, a lot of people move there. A lot of really interesting retail's gone in there. But sometimes, there are vacant storefronts. A whole bunch have filled up recently. You had, I I can never pronounce this. Vintanthro Modern. It's a whole, place that relocated there this weekend. You have the Cat Cafe, first in the state, which
Oh yeah, that's
I'm
a
just
real
gonna,
different one.
I'm just going to tell people I believe you that concept makes sense because it doesn't make sense to me, but obviously people love it and it's a great thing.
I thought it was strange too. You've been in there?
Cats, yeah, I don't get it. Cats and coffee. I could never get anyone to connect the two to me. You have the cats here, you have the coffee there, Cat Cafe, but it's just my feelings. As a
But they've been
reporter,
around
'cause
for a while.
I know people love it. I mean, it's a really good thing that it's there and it's funky. And then you have this a vinyl record shop that just opened a few weeks ago, and vinyl is back.
Yep.
Just like print bookstores, independently owned, not the chains, which right.
Mhm.
Antiques Collectibles Shop opened. A polished hair and nail salon just opened. And you have that I forget the name of it. There's one that it's mostly a web business, but does kind of funky buttons and stuff that opened. So I think we got some good things happening, and it was Citywide Open Studios, which is big now because you have a lot of studios where all these great artists, including a wonderful artist from Syria who's world renowned, and a bunch of neighborhood artists, they all have studios up there and do the work there, and they open them up, and it's great. I thought it was a great weekend. Now, did you hit any of that?
I didn't get a chance to hit it. I observed it happening though. I had a bunch of other things to do.
I believe the Citywide, remember when I feel like we get tongue-tied? Sometimes we talk about how great New Haven is and why we settle here and why we're on an up. And it's kind of fungible about what it is about civic community. But I think Citywide Open Studios is one explanation where you have 3 weekends now. It used to be one. You have so many artists around town who open their studios, really creative special events that Artspace puts together in some building that's not being used for some other purpose, that they find something. And it is this sense of community with thousands and thousands of people that is distinctive.
No, and I think that one of the things that Andy Wolf has pointed
That's
out
your
to
culture
me,
person.
yeah, is that when the artists come in, they really transform a neighborhood, and ultimately, then it becomes a cool neighborhood, and it pushes them out. Then they go and they transform another one, and so it makes a huge difference. And a number of artists are moving into New Haven because they're supported by so many groups here, and by the city.
I do have a theory about that kind of gentrification in New Haven.
What's that?
A lot of people like us are always worried it'll happen because that's where it happens everywhere. The artists come in when it's funky, they make it nicer, they get booted out because it's a more desirable place, and the rents get too high, which, by the way, doesn't make me cry for the artist because they got that cheap rent. I remember writing once about an artist who expected to still live for free on Church Street. I went to his landlord, and he said, I'm supposed to let him live for free. He was never supposed to live there for free. I was thinking he's got a point there. But I think often when we worry about gentrification legitimately, what ends up happening in New Haven because you have so much poverty is the stuff gets fixed up, but the people don't get pushed out because it doesn't go completely. So it doesn't realize the dreams of the people who invest. So we had a whole bunch of new condos invested in late 80s before the recession hit. And it really made a lot of nice new stuff built. And then a lot of people lost their shirts because the recession, the values didn't go as high as everyone thought. And a lot of middle-class, working-class hacks in those buildings. I'm convinced that, but what do I know? That on Winchester Avenue, those lots that go for $3,000 for a bedroom or two, they're not going to go for $3,000 in a couple of years. That in fact there'll be more houses, but I could be wrong. I just think that in fact the artists stay in Westville. They've been there quite a while. I can't imagine. It's not like, yes, they're filling up those storefronts, but you still have some vacant ones from time to time. It's not. I don't think it's going to be Greenwich Village or the Upper West Side.
No, I think you're right, and I do think that it ultimately will make housing more affordable across our city
by increasing supply.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Now we have 2 question marks as we can't get to the bottom of in Westville Village. Everyone's excited about the Laney's coming back, the place that lost in the fire. I believe they're a little bit thinking about an idea whose time passed because there was a new version of it that didn't work. But anyway, this guy's going to build a new multi-use project there, which will be great for the neighborhood, right at the corner of Fountain and Central at the crossroads there and Whaley. And it's going to be not just, it's Delaney's, but what's really going to be is restaurants and apartments. And then at the old bank building at Fountain there and Central, there's a Key Bank. That's part of it. It's supposed to be a new restaurant by the people who do Shell and Bones, a really hot group in town. Nothing's happened with that in a long time. They got their zoning approval. Do you have any sense what's holding that up?
I really don't know what it is. I've been wondering the same because I thought they'd start building during the summer when most folks build. So I'm not really sure. We'll have to look into
But I'm not
that.
worried because I think retail is cyclical, and I think it's on and up there in the village.
Oh, I think so too. And it really is a cool place to visit.
New Westville is
come on
concerned
down.
about crime. There's been an uptick.
Yeah.
Crime is cyclical too. They have a new district manager, Rose Dell, who's gone in there really with a lot of energy.
Mhm.
She did the best summary I've ever read of like a neighborhood crime roundup. It's like, I feel like hiring her, but we don't pay as well as the police. But there are a lot of concern there. There have been break-ins and muggings and attempted child abduction, and they have Roosevelt's Cafe, which is a bar that's had 3 gun incidents now in the last few months. Any sense of what's going on there? Or?
Well, I've spoken to the chief about it, particularly the bar, and we're going to really be taking a good look at what goes on there and trying to make sure that we can reduce the violence that is going on, that it stems from that bar. Look, when I first moved to Edgewood Way, where I live now, there was a group of people going around breaking into cars, and it took a while, but our police force got them. I believe that we're going to get the ones that are doing that now, and things will calm down. But what we've got to tell people is, particularly for car break-ins, house break-ins, that sort of thing, you've got to make sure that it's not that your car doors are locked. You've got to make sure that it feels like a safe and wonderful environment, but sometimes people come into the neighborhood and they're going to be checking your doors. So make sure they're locked and make sure that you defend your space.
And you're in a city.
You're in a city.
I live in that neighborhood. 2008, I was held up at gunpoint. I've always felt safe there. I think it's cyclical. There were some kids who were causing trouble there, and they go about the kids.
Yeah.
I feel so completely safe in that neighborhood. You're never in a bubble anywhere really in America right now. Thank God I don't go to a suburban high school. I'd probably hide under the desk, but
No, I think I feel safe there too, and I walk my dogs at night.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't leave unlocked bicycles on the front yard.
No, and I lock because my car got broken into when I first moved over there, and I was really surprised. And
you feel violated.
And you do feel that way, but I had to have left the car door open, and so I don't do that anymore.
Yeah. Okay. But we do remind people they're listening to Mayor Monday on WNHH-FM. Your home for community radio at 103.5 FM, live streamed at newhavenindependent.org. Okay, you ready for pop quiz?
What's that? Probably not.
Okay. No, don't say that. Come on, you got to think positive, confident.
Okay, yes,
You're ready for anything that comes at you. Mayor New Haven. We change the subject every 3 minutes, and you're ready with your mid out. Okay. I want you to pronounce the following word. The way it's pronounced in New Haven right now. P-O-K-E. By the way, I would have failed this quiz. Markeisha Ricks had to teach it to me in her article she wrote Friday.
I would say poke, but
that's how it is. It is how it pronounced most of the universe, and it was until about a few months ago the way most people pronounce that in New Haven.
How is it pronounced now?
Well, now it's called poke. Poke or poke. What it is it's a kind of food.
Oh, is that
That's the inside of a sushi in a big salad bowl with like rice and maybe fish and vegetables and all that stuff. And it's a South Korean specialty there. 3 places have moved downtown the last few months, and a 4th is about to open where the cookie store was.
Okay.
At York Street.
Okay, so I've never had it before. Have you tried it?
I haven't yet, but I'm gonna because I read the article and the pictures were amazing.
Really?
So my staff went out on our dime. To try all of them. They said they were really delicious, very healthful. And, these crazes are funny because I had no idea how to pronounce it. And I actually forgot I had to read it here to see.
I know.
I cheated. But yeah, I definitely want to try it because they look, if you look just at the pictures in that article from Friday, you want to.
Looks good.
Yeah, it's just like a big bowl that's much bigger than a sushi. It's like 5 sushis worth. And it's got the rice. It's got the fresh vegetables. If you like fish, it's got the raw fish.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That's the kind of protein I know you're.
I love it. Yeah, I love protein.
All right. So I wanted to ask you about an interesting thing that came up on a business tour. So your development commission went on a tour of the updating projects around town. Mm-hmm. And at the corner of Amistad and Church, actually it's technically Church Street South, but if you say that, you think you mean the housing development is getting torn down. It's a few blocks from there. Church Street becomes a street called Church Street South after the highway as you go toward the train station. You have that medical area at Amistad, used to be a school. So you folks, Matthew and Emerson, your development administrator, said you folks are thinking about putting a bus hub there. So you're feeling there should be someplace other than the green where people change buses and connect. And you originally wanted it at the new garage, second garage being built train station. The state said, we don't like this idea because they didn't feel Union Avenue could handle that, which was kind of surprising to me because I thought Union Avenue was pretty wide. But they're experts and I'm not. They must have had some reason. They must have looked at traffic patterns. And
I think they thought that it would be difficult to build the garage so that the buses could come through. I think that was another concern of theirs.
So how did you come up with the Amistad and Church?
Well, I know that our development team has been looking for a space, and we've been looking for the past nearly 5 years to find a way to take the transfer stations off of the green.
And the reason for that?
Because what happens is that a lot of people who come in, particularly for drug treatment, they get bus passes from Medicaid, and they have to transfer at the green to go to the Apt Foundation or to the other places where they get care. And so they also have to come back to the green after they've gotten their care. And oftentimes sometimes it takes many hours before you get a bus that's going to take you back to the valley. And so they have to wait out on our green, and then they really become targets for people who are giving away things like K2, that sort of thing.
Yeah, hey, try this big K2. Yeah, give me some more. I just overdosed.
Yeah.
But I mean, so it's a tricky thing. You have policy goals. You don't want that at the green. But you also don't want people waiting an hour and a half where there's nothing else around, right? Don't you want other people who aren't getting K2 to like go to stores, get something to eat, go to the bathroom? I guess they have a bathroom there.
I think that, like I've been to other
That's so
cities.
good about Union Station. You're talking about building retail around there. They
Right.
could have been around retail.
And I think that would have been better, but they'll be close enough to Union Station there just to walk over once we get the retail there. And if they have an hour, they'll be able to do that. Actually Doug Hosslayton is working
He's
on
a traffic person.
Yeah. He is working on another proposal that would have our transfer stations in still one or two of them on the green, but then one would be, I believe, in Dixwell, one would be over in the hill somewhere, and then one would be in Hamden and
So you're
West
talking
Haven.
about decentralizing.
Yeah.
That could also be mini boosts to those other areas. Dixwell
Right.
Avenue, you're trying to boost retail there. Matter of fact, last week, the old Seatown in Dixwell Plaza? We looked at land records last week, and what's it called? The place in Science Park, Concat, they bought the building, and I heard there's some kind of plan going on for that. What's that all about?
Yeah, they are going to have a communications center there. I think they might even have a little bit of so by communications, IT training and development right there. And they may have a cafe that the folks that are trained at their other facility in Science Park can then operate. And so I think it's going to be one of those it'll be like a mini district.
And wasn't there sort of an arts component? Because I know Titus Caffer, who just won a MacArthur Prize.
Can you believe that?
He's an awesome guy.
He is.
And he's starting that wonderful arts center at the old Bicknell factory on Henry Street in Dixwell. He's decided to stay in New Haven. He loves it here, and he's had all these ideas. So I guess there was something in there about TV or video. I
think they're going to do all of that, as well as the sort of learning how to code and all of that, and building those kind of businesses in the community, and a restaurant.
What's the city's role?
We've been as supportive as we can be. One of the things that we're looking to develop that whole area, and so since they are going to be, like a cornerstone of the area, we're going to be working with them on the development.
Well, if we call the area more than 2 blocks, although it's very important to call it an area, sometimes 2 blocks, it has its own identity. You are redoing the area. I mean, you have that Titus Caffer project. You have the Munson Street development with 200 new apartments are coming in or more, right?
Right.
And you have Beulah Heights has several different smaller scale affordable housing projects. You got the new elderly place going up at across the street there on Henry.
I think that we're actually looking at Dixwell Plaza, though. We're getting ready to build the Q House. We really are going to do it. And we really want the plaza to be rebuilt and re-energized.
And isn't it a condo? Don't people own? It's sometimes hard to know
about
who owns.
11 owners, yeah. And so
how
that's
is
been
that
the difficulty.
association right now?
They're still functioning, but our concern is that we want them to operate as a whole and to work with us to develop it, or to we ultimately want them to identify a developer that will develop that whole those 2 blocks, because
right now it's anchored by Stetson Library, which is going to be moving across to the Q House.
It's going to be moving across. There's a church there that is another anchor. And then, of course, this new project will be an anchor. But, it needs a lot of work and a lot of planning. I know that our Livable Cities Initiative department has been working on planning the whole redevelopment of that area. The real difficult part is the fact that there's so many owners and trying to get everybody to work together.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I always think about Dixwell Plaza because part of urban renewals, we tore down lots of streets that had stores that people invested in one by one with apartments over them. We're all sad those are gone because you look at the old photographs and how much was going on there on the street level. Although I think when we get nostalgic, we forget that trends change, economic change. Those stores probably might not be in business today anyway. But Dixwell Plaza was built in that sort of modern style, very concrete. It didn't hold up well. And it's always been kind of struggling as long as I've been here to kind of get its footing.
No, I think it's been really.
So does planners supplanting organic economic mixed use development.
And it worked to some degree, but the one of the other major tenants is Cornell Scott Hill Health Center, and they're going to be in the new the new Q House, and so it really is a time where we need to reimagine it.
The time is right.
The time is right.
And what I always wonder whether a movie theater or a roller rink could go there.
That's not a bad idea. Yeah,
I mean, you could get denser there.
You could, and I think we're looking at perhaps some housing and commercial, mixed commercial retail.
Mm-hmm. There was some talk last week about, we were talking earlier in this program, Mayor Harp, about about Open Studios and what a great mass kind of civic event that is. And I'm thinking of others like Rock to Rock, where thousands of people come on the bike ride. Just something happens almost every week in New Haven. There are two events from the 90s that aren't doing as well, and they rely on the state for a lot of money. States don't have much money, and that's Arts and Ideas Festival and the tennis tournament.
Mm-hmm.
And the tennis tournament, like, I find no one ever cares about the tennis tournament when they read The Independent, because I look at the numbers, unless we're writing about how the city has to pay for police protection. And people aren't really going. They make a lot less money than they used to make. And now they're saying, I don't know if it's true or not, that if they don't get a big sponsor in the next 2 weeks, it might be gone. There's a new publication, Business New Haven, put out by Michael Bingham. And in it, he has an article where he interviewed the economic development person. They were saying they think that the Arts and Ideas and the tennis might be past their time. Arts and Ideas is wonderful. They say, like, now, I think the way Matthew Emerson put in the article was half of New Haven says, oh, I should have gone there this year. And the other half said, what's that? And people really don't, in New Haven, aren't really connected to the tennis festival. Do you think maybe it's just those things have lifespans?
Well, I don't know. I wouldn't say that. As it stands now, thousands of people went to the tennis tournament. One of the things that you can think about the tennis tournament, it might have been the stadium itself may have been overbuilt, but as I understand it, we get as much foot traffic and people sitting in seats as all of the other tennis tournaments. We just have a bigger stadium.
Gotcha.
And so I think that we, there were a number of levels that we could be as a tennis tournament. We were at the highest level, and maybe we should rethink that. And who knows where that is, and we may get a sponsor within the 2 weeks, or we may not. What's amazing to me is the state decides who they're going to support and who they're not going to support. They put 66 or more millions of dollars into the Goat Yard in
a baseball
Hartford.
Stadium in Hartford.
And so here we are doing that.
I think they're called the Yard Goats.
Well, whatever.
I think you and I follow baseball about the same pace.
Yard goats.
I've never been to a game.
I didn't even know what a yard goat was, so that's probably why I call it.
What is a yard goat? Is that a goat that's like in someone's house rather than on a farm?
I have
because there are some in
idea.
Edgewood. There are some in Edgewood.
And if you were a team, is that a good name to be? Who would be? Usually, you want to be fierce, right?
Well, the Toledo Mud Hens. There's the minor league Toledo Mud Hens. They're always my favorite.
Oh, really? Well, anyway, I mean, it seems so unfair in terms of the state and what they will support, and we don't really have any other than the Connecticut Open, any professional athletic events in our city. So I do think if we compare ourselves in terms of attendance to those places around the country, that we are very similar.
So you'd like to see the state bail them out?
Well, I'd like to see the state invest in them the same way they invest in sporting events in other places in our state.
One pros I heard this weekend, I found kind of interesting, was someone thought that they should sell the stadium to a private developer, would put a roof on it, and still try to do the women's tennis thing kind of tied into some other kind of women's athletics in that month, but also turn it into a year-round concert venue?
I think that one of the reasons that they have, it would require a design change, from what I've been told, to do concerts there because of the way in which concerts have changed and the heavy equipment that needs to get in. And so they would have to do some major renovations in order to facilitate that. But beyond that, there's been a lot of pushback from the neighborhood.
I live in that neighborhood, and even if I don't like the music, I say the more concerts, the better.
I'm with
You moved there,
I
no
live
one was there.
too.
We had them before. They were successful. I remember,
And I think
seeing
that-
Marcone there.
And I think if we had something else and it wasn't just used for, what, about 3 weeks out of the
let's
year?
use that asset.
Yeah,
$18 million State Dollars originally built that. Let's use it.
we should.
Let's have fun stuff. I wish you'd gotten Aretha.
Yes,
But
me too.
Aretha was
before,
done. Yeah.
Yeah.
She had her many good years. You're in arbitration with the police union.
Yep.
So they haven't had a contract for years. There's some tough issues here because New Haven doesn't have any money, but we're also paying cops less than other towns, and they're taking those cops away.
Yes.
Police are worried about what's going to happen to their benefits. We're worried about whether we can afford them and whether the city wants them to have a deal like other city unions where you have sort of a 2-tier pension plan, right?
Yeah, I think that we are looking at that for those new police officers who come on board after the contract. We are also looking at making some adjustments to the medical plan, which they're not happy about. And, we'd also like to look at our sergeants and detectives and make sure that they, too, earn a little more so that more people will sit for those tests and we'll have bigger lists. But we are the lowest paid police department in the state.
Do we have money to pay more?
And we don't.
So is that what the arbitration's about now? And arbitrator's going to decide whether we have the money?
I think they're going to be looking at whether or not we have the money.
So what is the status now? Or in the middle of arbitration?
We're in the middle of arbitration. So I think we're making our case and the union's making their case and the arbitrator will make a decision.
You know how long that takes?
I don't know, but they've been at it now for over a month.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Helen Ward writes in. Thank you for listening, Helen Ward. She writes, Mayor Harp, I just traveled to several cities here and in another country. I was impressed by what closing a street to cars in the center of the city did so much for the life of the city. I think this would be a great addition to street life in New Haven. Has this ever been considered? And if so, where?
Well, we did close one street to cars. It was on the Yale campus.
Wall Street. Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah.
That was great.
And I think we've, Wall Street and I believe, High, yeah. And so we have done that. I think the real problem for us is where will cars park? Because our streets are also places where cars park. So I don't know that, I don't know besides those streets where we would close others.
The Caroline Smith, who's an activist in town, she has suggested closing Orange Street from Elm to through Crown, but letting Chapel pass through.
That's a very narrow street. That's a possibility.
Yeah, I've been to Burlington. They closed in the early days of the Bernie mayoralty.
Mm-hmm.
They closed that whole downtown, like a big major street, for like 6 blocks, and it is packed. I was there in the summer. They are just packed. I thought they had movie extras because every day there'd be all these people at all these sidewalk cafes and all these public and all these musicians and everybody.
We could probably close Court Street too.
That's true.
And that might be helpful to that sort of retail that is there.
I would love to see Crown. I think that'd be kind of neat. Aaron, thank you, Helen, for that question. Aaron Good writes in. Ready? But this is not testing your knowledge, because he always tests our knowledge. When will Mayor Harp announce her plans and whether or not she will run again in 2019?
Well, I will announce my plans probably within the next month.
You usually wait for the last election to finish, right?
I do, yeah.
Any thoughts? And you had said you were absolutely running last time someone asked you.
Yeah, I haven't changed my mind about that, but I'm not ready to make a formal announcement yet.
What do you think about the latest on the state elections? The polls show Ned Lamont, the Democrat, up 8 points over Republican Bob Stefanowski. Stefanowski said he's ready to unleash some commercials that show Ned saying he would raise taxes. I don't know if that issue's getting the traction he wants. Oz Griebel, a third-party candidate, showed up with 11% in the last poll, which was a big jump. And this is the problem with us reporters. We always look at the last war to predict the next war. Historically, those third-party numbers plummet. So if a third-party candidate is showing up at 11% in a poll, they end up at 2 or 3. Ralph Nader found that for president. If that happens again, and after 2016, you can't take anything we say as a prediction of what might really happen. How do you see those independent votes going?
I think that the independent votes will go Democratic. And I think that one of the things that has helped Mr. Lamont is the Kavanaugh hearings. I think that many people really see that the state and the state legislature is really our last place of resistance, and we've got to have people who have the same values that we as an American people have, and not people that are connected to the sort of Trump movement that really wants to take us back to the 50s.
The African American Mayors Association, which you ran to recently, had a Tech in the City and Leadership Summit. You sent Daryl Jones, your controller, to talk about the use of technology and governance in model American cities. What did New Haven have to add to that discussion?
Well, we have ShotSpotter. We are using data with our CompStat, on a weekly basis. We are using Esri as
what's Esri?
Esri is where we do mapping of data across our city so that we can see what is going on in our city, so that we'll be able to take almost every data element that can be attached geographically to a place in New Haven and overlay those things. And then we can make decisions about how we deploy resources to those areas. We use that with our Clean and Safe Neighborhood project.
Yeah, and that's where you're doing those sweeps, right?
Right.
Except we don't call them sweeps, right? We never call them sweeps, but everyone is calling them sweeps, including your own people, because sometimes names stick despite your best efforts.
Yeah.
You have all the inspectors and everybody who deals with stuff on the ground in the neighborhood come together and share the information, go through one neighborhood to find all the problems, do a big, not sweep, a big effort, joint effort to solve them.
Inventory. And so what we do is we look at the data, then we go and we look with our human eye to see how they relate, and it helps us focus the resources and solve problems in those communities.
Last Monday night, something happened in New Haven. That was one of those moments. I wasn't there. My reporter was running around all over it. That this kind of reminds you what kind of moment we're in, at least for me. It was a Monday night, which is generally a quiet night in the city. And in the Ninth Square, you had Cafe 9. It had 3 performers. One was local. This guy's very good songwriter, Elson Jackson. Someone who was kind of a hot indie Americana band. And then right around the corner of the State House, this new club that's going great guns in the back of the, like where State and Chapel are, back of that lot. It used to be a vacant spot. They were having an Orquestro El Macabeo. Hope I said that right because I'm influenced by the Maccabees, which is this Puerto Rican band that was hot for National Indigenous Peoples Day, and an Afrobeat group that was pretty big from Brooklyn. Both places were packed. So our reporter was running back and forth in Ninth Square all night till 1 a.m. on a Monday night. I think he caught all 5 acts. So he wrote about that, and I got a call from the Concert Music Hall that said, did you realize that on that same night, we had Ray LaMontagne, which is more for people our age, kind of acoustic guy, actually even a little past our time a little bit, and he sold out.
Wow.
You had a Monday night when all these kind of different kind of audiences of people who like music, places you can't really usually go in small venues, because even Concert Music Hall is really a great venue. Even though it's a little bigger than a club, you almost kind of feel like you're in a club, but more comfortably. All that happened in one night. It just made me think about that moment we're in. New Haven's happening.
It's happening. We're a cool city.
Well, thank you, Mayor of this cool city, for coming in to join us on Mayor Monday. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. Thanks for the questions, Helen and Aaron and Bob. And I want to also thank, of course, Gateway Community College. We love Gateway. And not only because they provided support for today's program, along with Bertram Moses PC. We're going to take it out with the Afro-Semitic Experience performing I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free from the group CD, A Plea for Peace. Now, we know what it's like to be free. We just got to remember to book our flight. Book your flight with us all day and all night long here at WNHH, New Haven's home for community radio.